Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Inner Revolution. This is Jasmine, and I am here today with my co-host Benjamin. Yoo-hoo, Benjamin, how are you?
Hello, a nice big welcome to all of you listening to our show, and thank you so much for hosting this wonderful show again, Jasmine. It's always lovely to be on the air with you.
Thank you. Well, it's certainly interesting, and I have to say that today I am grateful. I'm grateful for the temperatures here in Ontario being above zero, because I got to tell you, I was getting a little verklempt there. A few days ago, I posted on my Facebook page that I was so happy and dancing around singing and acting ecstatically that I'd seen two robins in a single day. And I thought, yes, although I was a little concerned because although I know that means spring is on its way, I was wondering what they were going to eat because everything is still sub-zero here, and I was hoping they would enjoy frozen worms. And it, I thought that's okay. And then my excitement was subdued by a snowstorm that quickly followed, and I was wondering if I was ever going to see any color in my exterior world again. But alas, things are beginning to melt. I am seeing some green on the ground, or at least that sort of fresh brown green that shows up after the snow melts. And I'm even enjoying the dirty snow melting. It just seems like there's some more hope in the air. Yeah. And speaking of hope, and speaking of spring and new things, I would like to begin today's Inner Revolution show with the topic of, and the questions of, really, and I invite everyone and anyone who's, tuned in, dialed in on the chat to give us a call on Studio B, and Ben will give us information about that, or join the chat room, because I would like to talk about this new age fantastical idea that we create our realities. Now, some of you have heard me speak before, and you may have an idea of what side of the proverbial fence I sit on that topic. But I'm curious, do you believe that we create our realities? Do you feel or believe that if you change your perspectives within, you can actually influence and change your outer world? Do you feel you're the creator of your world? And if so, how? And what are your experiences around that? And if not, please tell me all about that too. I'm wide open to opening into this topic because I think for a lot of us it's a hot button space, and some of us might feel and believe that we create certain parts of our reality, especially those of us who've been on any kind of awakening path. We have some idea or concept of how we change our thoughts and we shift our inner world, and our perspectives about others and circumstances certainly shift and change. And even our abundance flows and rivers of fluidity and physicalities can change. But for a lot of us, it's kind of like we have this duality going on where it's like, yeah, I create some of my reality, but not all of it. And so I'd like to open into this. And what's your take on this, Ben?
Well, it's definitely somewhat challenging to just say it's one way or another. And if it is one way or another, is it completely one way or another? Is it black or white, or is all of it gray? It's somewhat difficult for me to sometimes discern what do we have influence over and what don't we, because when I look outside and I wish that there was sunshine there right now, I could snap my fingers and somehow the sun is not shining. The sky is still somewhat gray. Yet I also understand that I don't necessarily need to have my outer circumstances to reflect sunshine, to have the sunshine shine for me from within. So there is a question about how much can we influence our inner worlds, our external worlds, and there is some interesting scientific data coming out, and we have talked about some of it in some past shows, but I definitely love to speak a little more to not only in the chat room, but also to some people live. If you're willing to call in, I so welcome you joining in on the call. You can dial in through Skype by contacting the ID Freedom Screen 2, or you can join the call by dialing the number 310 Ah, there is someone calling.
Oh, oh, there.
Yes, yes, because I made another mistake by trying to talk and add him to the show at the same time. So rather than clicking on having him added to the call, I had a private conversation with him.
Well, that's nice. Hey, Nick, welcome to the Inner Revolution. How are you today?
He will join back in a moment.
Oh,
He'll call
okay.
back in.
All this, I'm actually quite enjoying this, what I could call mistaking and confusion, because I'm pretty sure that there are no mistakes. There certainly are mistakes, like directing a movie where we have several takes on the same scene, which seems to be happening here. But I like to talk about creation because lately I've had several conversations with clients and friends and just random people that I speak with, and it's interesting because I find myself having quite open and mentally intimate conversations with people that I could call strangers, but somehow. I suppose just in my willingness to open, they do too. And I have discovered that sometimes we believe we create our realities, especially when things are going great. Isn't that true? I mean, we hit that ball over the fence and have a home run, and it's like, yes, I did that. I practiced. I had a stroke of luck. I was in the zone. And we take full credit for that, and rightfully so, and it feels good. But what about those times when we strike out? Do we often, I know myself, like I've gone, oh, well, that was, that's because they weren't receptive, or they weren't hearing what I was saying, or the pitcher did this, or whatever. I can often come up with excuses to justify anything. But the funny thing is, in those moments when I hit that home run, I'm feeling fine and I'm doing that happy dance. But somehow when I strike out, per se, even if I try to make or place the responsibility of that creation and that unfoldment on somebody else's shoulders or in someone else's lap, I don't feel better. So how can, which is it? Am I only creating the good, but not the perhaps considered or felt discomforts in my world? Am I fully responsible for it all? Am I willing to be responsible for it all? What would it be like? Would I have to turn around and face my past and then say, oh my goodness, if I am in fact the creator, look at all the crap that I've created and brought into myself? No, no, I don't want that. So I would really love to open with all of you and hear what you've got to say about this. And how does it feel if we actually do step in the shoes of being the full-on creator of our worlds, including our beliefs, our definitions, the people and circumstances that we attract to us, our physical health, our relationships, our prosperity flows, our abundance, all of it. If we are truly responsible for all of that, how does that feel? Does that feel empowering to you? Or does it make you question what the hell is really going on in your world? Do you feel empowered or do you feel victimized?
Well, it seems to me like we certainly do have a certain amount of control, especially over the way that we feel about things. Because having done a lot of healing work, I understand that when I start to look at things from a different perspective, I might have some insight and a shift in perspective, which usually lends itself to feeling vastly different. And that's the whole idea why we often do healing work in the first place. We might have had a traumatic experience or just something came along that didn't feel so good, and we go back in order to start shifting our perspective. And some people also go into the mode of reliving things, which usually just has people quite literally relive it. However, when we start to actually get to the place where we start to shift the way that we perceive this, we find different ways of looking at it, maybe understand someone from a different perspective, then all of a sudden, I've always felt that there was also a shift in the way that I started feeling all in all. It was just that that situation had also started to shift for me in my perceived world. And that certainly allowed me to feel much better about whatever it was there at that time. And that was something like as if I had actually shifted my past. It was similar to shifting the perspective, almost shifted the instances themselves, and with that also the way that I felt about it. Now, did the past really shift? Well, that's a little bit questionable because, hey, am I really able to shift the things that happened? But then again, the past doesn't actually exist anymore. So that's quite fascinating. How can we play potentially with the past? And how can we then potentially also shift the way that we feel about the past?
Well, I'm a big proponent in my own perspective that the past doesn't create the present or the future, but the present actually influences the past. And that is, I recently posted that on as a status on Facebook, and a dear friend of mine called me a heretic, which I just absolutely loved. And isn't there a way in which, when we look at time, we have this linear perspective about it. And we look at it as if one thing leads to the next as a result of that. This is going to happen, and I'm going to project into the future. But what if time wasn't linear? I mean, time really is a man-made is a man-made topic. It is not linear. What if? Well, maybe it is. Who am I to say? But I do, propose and invite a new idea and a new perspective that what if time has some more voices? Anyway, speaking of time, what if time is spiral? What if is no past and no future, but rather parallel perspectives? What if each moment and each breath and the spaces between are really snapshots that are onto themselves their own entire universes or multiverses? What about that perspective? I mean, in the middle of a situation, I can experience it. Whatever kind of situation it can be really pleasant or highly unpleasant, pretty or ugly, call it what it is. It only ever has the meaning we give to it. So in the moment I'm experiencing a circumstance, and I'll say that perhaps it was unpleasant. 6 months down the line, I might remember it and experience it again, and it might even seem worse because I may have worked myself into a lather mentally about it and repeated that to myself over and over again. And Studio B, audio in B is off. What's going on? Audio in B is off.
I can hear you.
You can hear me.
Mm. Hi,
Just through
Benjamin
Skype,
Jasmine.
or can you
Skype,
hear?
just Skype.
Just
Just
Skype.
on Skype. No, we're back on now. There's some really interesting technological issues unfolding here, and I'm wondering if it's all the great energy. So what I just off for about 10 seconds. It's interesting because our last week's show, only the first 48 seconds recorded. And so we went on to the YouTube and the YouTube channel for Rev Radio, which, by the way, there is a new YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com/user/talk revolution radio, you'll be able to access all of the archives from both studios A and B with all of the amazing hosts and their very unique perspectives that they offer out here on Rev Radio at freedomslips.com, which, by the way, while I'm at this service announcement, is also 100% listener supported. So if you can just find it in your heart to offer up any kind of support, it would be great, because everyone who works here in any capacity, whether you hear us as on-air personalities or working behind the scenes, we're all doing it from the love of our hearts and the desire to share. So if you go to the Rev Radio at freedomslips.com and press the support us button, there's all sorts of cool things. You can just do a regular donation. You can buy a chat room icon, which I keep reminding myself to do. And now I'm actually writing a note, so I will do that because I like something cool and funky and Jasmine-like in there to represent myself. And there's seed packs you can buy, and or just, donate however many nickels works for you. And so now, back to the callers that are here.
Yes, we have two callers that joined us. Nick is back, and someone else joined us. How shall we call you today?
Yoo-hoo.
Sorry, muted. Hyro is good, please.
Hyro.
Hi, Hyro. I know your voice.
Yes, we spoke before. Yeah. I don't know really to start, because you two have covered, in the time that I started, you started talking about, you started from a situation where I could bicker all the way through that. It's like, why is it I tell these people these things and these things don't happen to me the way that I tell them? Are they so stupid? But Jasmine, and then you moved on to time, which is something that seeing time in a very different way, like living in the present moment, where I don't live like that. I do think about the present when I can be mindful, but mostly I'll be bickering about that same thing I was just talking about there, or the same thing in the future, rather than just living in the present moment. So it's everything always ties together, but I don't know where to start. So I'll just sit back, if you don't mind, Benjamin and Jasmine.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. Lovely to have you on the show with us. Thank you.
And Nick is here. Is there someone else here too? Hey, Nick.
Hi, how are you?
I'm super fine. How are you?
Great. Same. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, it's a pleasure and an honor. So yeah, of course we create our own reality, and everyone that we share this planet with creates their own reality. And of course there's an overlap, right? And so what we have in this world today is an obvious kind of a mishmash of everyone creating their own reality. And it kind of illustrates the absolutely critical importance of how we must be educated and not indoctrinated like we are today. So what we have here is a few people who, print the money, run the industry, run the education, run the media, just anything you can name, kind of spending all of their time figuring out ways to get us all to think like they want us to think, instead of thinking like we should be thinking of our own free will. And so many of us believe that we're exercising our own free will, and we don't realize how much has been implanted in us. We have to remember that, this was all going on when we were born, and there was a whole, population of people, each creating their own reality, and not really having much understanding of how these individual realities overlap and, in some cases complement each other, in some cases conflict. And so what we need is to figure out a way that we can all just create our own realities in peace and harmony without having to all think alike, still have our own free wills, get our creativity back. We were born into a world where they charge you for an education, for an advanced education, and then put you in kindergarten for 12, 13 years, It's all kindergarten straight through, all the way to grade 12.
Yeah, but somehow the kindergarten lessons are so missed out on most of us. You'd think after 12 or 13 years we'd all know how to share and be kind and not
Yeah,
touch things that we aren't, we didn't ask permission for first.
but maybe as natural creators of our own world, it takes a little longer to learn about authority from the external perceptive world.
Well, here's the thing. Kindergarten is German for child garden, right?
Hmm.
And so people think, oh, it's a garden where children go and they learn. No, it's a garden where your child is planted in dirt and given chemical fertilizers and trying to grow them into a monstrosity that certain people want, rather than, what they claim is to bring out the best in children, give them a chance to, enhance their creativity. There's nothing individualistic about our education system. It is a cookie cutter system that everyone must conform to or else you fail. Okay, that has nothing to do with bringing out individualism, bringing out, traits. It's a communist system. I mean, the 10th plank of the Communist Manifesto is government control of education systems.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I feel your intensity and passion for what you're speaking of. And, I see a lot of that as well. My question to you is, earlier you said that, we're taught to think one way and indoctrinated into a system rather than thinking the way we should think. So I'm curious to know how you would define that should thinking to be.
Again, it's individualism that we need to have our freedom. We have the illusion of freedom. And it's a type of indoctrination to accept that as just the way it is. Like when I was a boy, I was told that you either get an education so you can get a good job, or you're a dropout and a bum. Well, to me, there's more to this life than just those two choices. And there's a restriction. We're just put into a mental kind of a box that, that makes us think in those terms alone and kind of miss out on, the vast expanse of the multiplicity that we are really in, and just train our eyes to only see what the presenters want us to see. So it's in individualism, like what is in you to bring that out, rather than forcing into you what somebody else wants in you.
I certainly hear that, especially insofar that we assume that everyone has to learn the same thing. Whereas clearly most people do understand that everyone has different talents. Everyone has different ways of thinking and different ways of going about the world. And rather than enhancing innate abilities, we're trying to imprint them with this cookie cutter view of what's required from an outdated paradigm of the Industrial Revolution, what's required in order for you to fit the most amount of types of jobs that are required for you, in essence, to become just another part of the larger machine, rather than a free-thinking being that might actually come up with things that are better for us at large, rather than good for an elite that created these standards in the first place.
Benjamin, you could have, if you did that, you'd have anarchy. You need to have women not walking around with black lipstick and short hair, and men not in tank tops. This is necessary, and this is why we need to have people like Obama and Clinton and all these people controlling us, so that we all follow much the same beat.
Yes, it sounds very necessary for our survival, such that things remain that way, because who knows what could happen if all of a sudden men would start wearing black lipstick. Oh my, or are some already?
Well,
And the
I say
women in
nothing.
tank tops, in Ontario, people can have to wear tops if we don't want to. Isn't that
Oh!
exciting? Talk about creating your own reality.
I don't
And
think
in
I'm going to complain about that one,
Actually,
Jasmine.
then just look at what they call those tank tops. Wife beaters.
Oh, for men.
Yes.
Well, that's interesting the way we term things and talk about creating a reality there, where we define things and nickname things perhaps, and then actually those things live up to the reputation. And I mean, one could also argue chicken or egg, which came first.
Well, the thing is that our words do create our reality. They certainly shape the way that we look at things, because why else would it be called spelling if there isn't some magic in it? So that when we start to look at how we actually use the words in order to describe and create our reality, and we become a lot more conscious of how we want to create our reality and how it is determined from the outside world, we might start to recognize that things aren't always as solid or as predetermined by the names that have been given, but rather that we have a lot more creative freedom in the way that we do shape our world by renaming things, by redefining things. Because when we just call something by a different name, it might actually start to appear different to us. Like I believe, for example, the LGBTQ community has started to take certain words that were derogatory first, use them themselves, and people didn't find them to be as derogatory anymore. All of a sudden, they actually became words of their own empowerment. And thus they turned this around. We can use the same terms, or we can start to use new terms.
Great concept, but you could apply that to trees, something less sensitive. Anything, that's absolutely right. We need to respell, we need to redefine everything that we do, everything. And it's not just by word. I don't think that's, I think in the old days, I mean, when I speak to a creature that is sentient, I don't use any words to speak to the creature. But when I speak to that is supposedly sentient, the zombie creature that I meet in the street, they don't understand a single word that I'm talking about. But the animal will understand exactly what I'm talking about without me opening my mouth.
Well, I love that you said the zombie creatures. I recently had an experience walking into a Walmart, which I rarely go into, but I was on a mission trying to find something, and it seemed to be perhaps a place where I might be able to locate the object. And it was fascinating because as I walked through it, they have this food section, and then they have their retail goodie section. And, I noticed that in the food section, people actually looked like they had no circulation running through their faces. They looked like there was no life force, no shakti, no chi, no energy, no vibrancy. And it actually froze me on the spot. I was stunned, and I just opened into it and I looked at it, and that brought up a whole bunch of interesting concepts and ideas for me around what's going on with the food and everything else. But what I recognized in that moment too is I could see them that way, which topographically it seemed that way, and perhaps if I spoke to them the way I'm speaking here, which is the way I regularly interact with humanity, they may not understand a word I'm saying, as you just said. But,
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
what I do know is that we all are energetic vibrational beings. We are all based in tone and electromagnetics, and we all have a unique sound at the very core of us that vibrates. And so as we would speak to the creatures around us, I do that too. I love that. I just open with them and, tune in from a telepathic perspective, which is, perhaps like telepathy, but has more of that feeling empathic connection. If we can open like that with people, our words really are irrelevant, because from a communicative perspective, really, the spoken word only accounts for 15% of communication. The rest is energetic, it's body language, it's how we feel. I mean, I know that I've heard my name spoken in a myriad of ways, from a pleasurable perspective to, Jasmine, get your, butt over here, and why did you do that? And, I've heard it from a threatening perspective. So it really is the same word, and I understood it differently because I could feel it. I've also heard it spoken sweetly, and I, under the cloak of benevolence, could feel the malevolence underneath it. And so,
I really think that is a brilliant thing to say, and I think it's a wonderful. You're a wonderful person. Well, I've heard you and Benjamin before. I know you're wonderful people. I know Manik's lovely, but like, what really happens though, I find, is this, which goes back to what we were saying earlier, is that if I use that kind of niceness that is within me on one of the creature, the people, the public. That's what the celebrities call them, the public. They're also saying the same thing that I say, the zombie creatures. When they say the public, that's what they mean. When Obama says the American people, he's not talking about himself. He's talking about us, the slave creatures. It's very different. So when you give that kind of niceness to one of these let's say the lower minded, fully not lower minded, more in the trance person, let's say that, more in a trance person, they look at what's the information they've been given from you, they associate it with what they've seen on the TV or any form of media that they've been watching. It really doesn't matter which one it is, whether it's the Guardian or the Sun or a tabloid or your highest paper. And what you still have got that same kind of mindset that does not really think for itself. It still follows. And so what they interpret it as is, he wants something from me. It must be something to do with money, sex, or moving up a pecking order, because they're like crabs in a bucket, all these people are. So all these people always interpret it in exactly the same way. So they always want something from you. They always have an agenda. They cannot simply exchange ideas.
I offer a question. Do any of us ever not have an agenda?
I never have an agenda.
Never.
My agenda is, well, I came for that, and this is the money for it. If you want to have chit chat, I'll try, but I really can't be bothered.
So then perhaps an agenda might be that what I'm really looking for is a deeper connection. I mean, I think too, also the way we're defining agenda, like the word manipulation, we want to look at the definition we're giving it. If we're giving it a negative concoction, that an agenda means I'm out to get something negative from you without giving anything in return or without any integrity, appreciation, or honor or respect, then that's one way.
Well said.
When I look at the word agenda, I say, well, I do have an agenda. It's rare in my world that I don't, and I think until the time I stop breathing, that'll probably be the case. I have an agenda to want to connect with humanity so they connect with their hearts. I have an agenda to share what I know from a loving place. I have an agenda that those that I speak with feel heard, that they leave my presence more uplifted than when they first arrived. And if they don't, at least let them be in the same state and not worse. I have an agenda hoping that our planet and wanting to do well by it. I have an agenda to be kind to animals, to be sweet to my partner, to listen to people. I would say it's a rare bird or someone who's in a coma that doesn't have an agenda. I mean, don't we just want even our family members? Don't we want better relationships? We want them to be happy.
And the thing
I think you explained that extremely well. I meant negative agenda. Please carry on.
Yes, the idea being that usually when we talk about agenda, it's about something that is malevolent or manipulative in the negative sense. We often think about trying to get someone into something that they might not want themselves. However, we might be able to make the distinction here because what you were talking about is often more so identified as intention, because intention can also be positive or negative, and agenda is then often more seen with a negative slant, although when we really look at the underlying function of it, oftentimes agenda can also be positive. It doesn't necessarily have to be negative, as Jasmine explained. It's more about where are we coming from, and all of this is really more of a matter of vibration and learning to tune into one's inner sense, into one's inner knowing, because very often we might pick up where someone is coming from simply by recognizing the vibrations they're putting out, because we can try to even hide negative agendas all we want. Very often when we are tapped into our own truth, we will pick up that something's not quite right here. There's something that's not quite congruent between the words they speak and whatever resonates underneath. And most often it takes one to be very tapped into one's own truth to even notice these incongruencies when there is someone that has learned to have them be very deceptive in an artful way. At that point, they certainly can become very good at their craft, but that's often when they do conceal their intent and they're not forthcoming with it. And it is about being forthcoming, and that is often when we call it a positive intention rather than an agenda, because we're being transparent, not trying to hide where we're coming from. Most often people have an agenda also because they believe that they have to manipulate people in the negative sense into something that they want for themselves, and they couldn't find anyone out there with whom they would find a match, because usually if we do have an intention, there's most often someone that wants to engage in that way. The question is just, are we willing to look for those people, or do we have to just get other people, whether they want to or not, to fit that particular scheme as well?
Oh my God, that's just opened up a brilliant conversation. But you two just ace. I'm going to leave it because I know that Nick wants to say something.
Nick, hi.
Oh, hi. Yeah, no, you guys are breaking it down very, very beautifully. And another word that I would throw in there is maybe a little more benign is endeavor. You know, we do endeavor to better ourselves, better others, better our situation in the world. And in some cases, even that can be at the expense of others. And so what we need to do is act in a lawful manner that is, if it interferes with anyone without their knowing, that it's in a positive manner, and one that if they haven't authorized ahead of time, they would authorize, because some people you just can't reach. And, I do endeavor to try to just lead by example and help people to, like I say, bring out what's in them rather than copycat what they see on television or what they think someone else has put ideas into their heads that they think is positive or necessary. And yeah, so keep going. You guys are really breaking it down and starting to put it in language, in words that people will be able to understand, because that's what we need to do, is we need to understand the meanings of our words. In order to get to the etymology, I suggest people look more to the Old English dictionaries and things like that to see what the early meanings of words were, rather than like going to Etymonline and stuff like that. That I don't trust a lot of these resources that manipulate language and cause us to use words in ways that we don't understand, because words have power. They're called spelling because they do cast spells.
Yep.
And yeah, and so we need to understand how that power works before we start wielding it.
I so hear what you're saying there, in that it is so helpful to go back into the old dictionaries. And English is actually my second language, so it's been an interesting journey learning this language along the way. And I actually found that what has helped me incredibly much is to not necessarily having to know the exact meaning of the word, but rather in every specific conversation to start breaking down with the person in front of me, how do we now want to use this particular word? What is our intention behind it? Because there is no meaning even set in the words, but what is important is that we are being very clear and, again, transparent with each other what it is that we're trying to communicate, because only by us redefining our language the way that we want to use it do we regain the power over those spells. Then all of a sudden using a word or my name doesn't give anyone else power unless I want to give it to them. It is because I am then now putting that power, that spell, that redefinition back into it. Even if they want to use my name in vain, then I have the power to say, hey, no, no, you know what? I haven't defined that word that way. I hear what you're trying to communicate, but it so doesn't match for my definition that it actually sounds comical. Then I can bring the humor back in. Then I can bring in flexibility and fluidity that really allows me to dance with it all rather than getting stuck on things being one way or another, because they don't seem to be as solid. Because even when we look at the physics of things, it's hilarious that we are all looking at this material stuff in one way or another. We're touching it, we're experiencing it in so many different ways, and yet when we look at science at the atomic level, it seems to be made up of mostly empty space. It's sort of comical how this works, but that also allows us to regain our power. It allows us to start redefining and recreating our world. And that is where the gumption comes from. That is where we start to hold our own staff without even having anything in our hands. That's where the power comes from within, because now no one can control us from the outside by saying, oh, no, 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 this has to mean this, but rather I'm saying, well, how about we start to work together on seeing how we want to use it in this context, because that way we can have a nice back and forth and a common transparent understanding to work with it, rather than fighting over which way is the best way or which way we need to work it here.
And
Well,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
One word I would like to address that is used way too much, and it means basically nothing, is change. Look, things change whether we try to change or not. We might as well just accept there is change already and get on with what kind of change are we talking about. And so I think the healthiest, most effective change is not so much doing something different, but getting rid, looking back, putting a microscope on what we, many of our understandings as much as we can at one time, or, in a given point, amount of time, and start examining what isn't well defined and start trying to define them better. And what that involves is just getting rid of all of the layer upon layer of again, it's propaganda, it's indoctrination of somebody else telling us what these things mean, and going back to what they originally mean. And, also when, this is for our own understanding, but communicating with someone else is another issue again, because now you have to speak on their level. You have to speak according to their understanding. And a lot of the times, the better you can do that, the better they're going to understand your words as you intended them, rather than the words that they hear and they're going to interpret.
Well, the one thing I've come to understand is that each one of us is a walking meaning-making machine. And we each have our own definitions. And as an example, I'll use the word marriage. What does that mean? I have watched many people, like, you said something that struck me as a profound, for me, a profound polarity, and it causes a little bit of confusion for me, or at least it has in the past. Because what I've discovered is if I try to communicate in order to use words that someone else understands, what that means is that I have to then have a full and complete understanding of their encyclopedias and their dictionaries, when my experience is most people don't even know their own dictionaries or their own meanings. And as an example, I'll turn to that word
Well,
marriage.
Jasmine, you said something earlier that I'd really like to add because it didn't come up. It isn't just about these words. It's also, you said, like, how much of the percentage is only the words and how much is else. The communication with people is something far more than just words. They don't understand the words anyway.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. There is a nice example for that. Let's say there is someone of the opposite sex approaching you in a bar and is saying, hey, would you like to go out with me this evening? And depending on how you use your words, what kind of an inflection you use, it could have a completely different meaning, because you might use the words, yeah, right, and you might approve of their proposal, or you might say, yeah, right, and completely deny what they're saying. And the interesting thing is that the other person might not even exactly know those particular definitions for those words, yet the sound that they're made up of is still more universally understood than necessarily the words themselves. There is so much power in the sound itself. And I do strongly also believe that we actually are at the core of our beings more sound and vibration than we are particular words, and we have learned to use words and written language, and it's such a priceless tool. It's so beautiful to use it because it allows us to communicate in a completely different way. But there are also other ways of communicating with another person that might simply be through a look, a touch, an intention. And I
Yes.
also know that there is more and more research clearly showing, like, for example, there is a Russian scientist called Korotkov that has done a lot of research on telepathy. And for him, it's very clear that there is no question whether it exists. The question is more about what conditions are necessary for telepathy to occur. And almost everyone has had this telephone telepathy example where they think of someone and bang, they call. And there is now another scientist like Rupert Sheldrake, for example. He is now showing scientifically that these are not actually random occurrences, but that we can or do have actually some telepathic intuition that way. The thing is that for most of us, since we haven't used any of this in a really long time, it's for the most part atrophied. However, we do certainly have the capability of tapping into those skills if we're willing to exercise and practice this a little more. And I mean, words are beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I love language. It's such a nice playful tool, and yet it is also easy to be mistaken just for its surface. We also need to take that into account again, from which it is made up, which is sound and vibration.
Absolutely.
And I would like, to speak to words, because they have their place. They're signposts, and they do provide, currently at this time on this lovely blue marble we're living on, a way to express that, that can come from the heart, that can resonate healing, loving tones. My question is, do most of us ever really look at our own definitions? And my case in point being marriage. I like to use this one because I would say everyone has an idea of what marriage is, like it or leave it, want it or not. We all have our definitions around that. And how many people enter into that union of marriage and never define for themselves or each other what that truly means to them, and then to be able to openly clarify and share with their potential betrothed partner, or they just leave it up for grabs, or definition by the governments or the legality systems, or they have unspoken agreements around things. And I think it's really, it would be really prudent for us as people to begin to be comfortable with asking questions like, what do you mean by that? What does that mean to you when you say marriage, or when you say, a date? What does that look like for you? What do you mean when you say you want to be happy? Can you tell me what that encompasses? What are you doing, seeing, hearing? And many of us haven't even considered that for ourselves, let alone be able to actually, we blindly walk through our worlds using these tools of words with some foggy definitions or meanings from somewhere out there, and then we often point to the other person or the government or whatever it might be and lay blame on them when we haven't even really been clear with ourselves. We haven't asked ourselves those intimate questions that can lay open who we think we are and allow us the opportunity to reclaim, readjust, and redefine and recreate our worlds.
And there are a few other words. Actually, you use the word government. That I find is quite interesting because some people view themselves and the community as part of the government too. Some people see the government as just them. There is so many different ways of looking at that particular word. Or here's a few other ones. There's the word love or consciousness, intimacy, desire. There's so many different words that are sort of fuzzy on the outside, and it can be rather tough to actually have them be contained by something like a sound, especially a word as vast as God, for example. Now, it has actually been used in many other ways for many other purposes. But do a lot of people then really go back into themselves to find out how they themselves define that word? What does it mean to them? What parts of it have been misunderstood and what parts have been understood? What am I clear on and what am I not clear on? And when we start to revisit the definitions of the words and the concepts, it's oftentimes more about the concepts that lie behind it. And then we also start looking at, because these words start to form phrases and sentences, and from that we create our beliefs. And from the beliefs, they then start to determine the way we view the world, and from the way that we view the world, we act in a certain manner. So in essence, the way that we act then shapes the way our life is. So by the way that we start to define the small chunks, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it starts to determine our life
Yeah.
without oftentimes having necessarily looked at the mechanics themselves that underlie that process. Because
Right.
very often we're forgetting about, even when I say the word apple, for example, you most likely to understand it have to think of an apple in one way or another. You're probably creating an internal representation of an apple. Now, my question is, how far in your internal representation away is this apple from you? Is it close? Is it distant? Is it maybe a red apple or a green one? Or maybe yellow? Or what color is it? Does it have a stem? Does it have a leaf? There's
Yeah.
so many different aspects to the way that we shape our inner worlds that we haven't really looked into that aspect of our reality anymore, because we do create a map of the outside world in
Very good.
from the inside out. And that's very much what neuro-linguistic programming, for example, looks at, how we create a map of the outer world through our inside, essentially living in a holographic universe. Now, when we start to get into that kind of an aspect, we can also start to look at quantum consciousness, for example, where then the question becomes, do we quite literally influence our outer world by the way that we look at it? And the famous double slit experiment, for example, would say yes to such an idea. What do you think?
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that there's two. I'll leave it to you, Nick. But like, there are two words there that were very important. Love is a very big, messy subject because nobody actually understands what that means. Most of the people in the world think love means lust because they only watch television. And there's marriage, which in Latin is ad finis, I think, or ad finatus, something like that. It's like, so to the end. So you are making a bond until the end. That's the sort of thing it is. Those two words you could define between you and your partner, and it really doesn't need any legal stuff. Unfortunately, that isn't the way most people see it. But those two could be discussed between one another. Whereas the rest, when you're talking about the way that we see the world, you're actually talking about the entire way that we need to change the entire world right now. It needs to be changed exactly as we define it within our minds and make these things happen rather than just following the definition that we don't even know of the authorities, which should not even exist. I see a world without government. I see a world without money. I see a world where people stop this nonsense of trying to control one another.
I
Nick.
hear you. I hear you there. That sounds fabulous to me. It would be lovely to have that. Now the question is, what do we need to change on our inside to make that so compelling that people cannot stop to jump on board.
Well,
Yes, go for it.
well,
I wrote
again,
the Georgia Guidestones. Sorry. Sorry.
you know, the
Go ahead.
the
Who's talking now?
this is Nick. The again, the word change, I have a serious problem with that. It's not so much a change, it's kind of like a focusing on what's important and starting to recognize and discern between what's important and what's frivolous and what's misleading and what's truth. That's not so much a change, it's more of a just, I don't know. But let me get into some more examples of some of the things you just talked about, Benjamin. First of all, apple, when I hear that, I think of someone biting into an apple. The mouth is open, and so it echoes in there, and it just sounds like apple,
Nice for you. It's
yeah.
actually more than just the apple itself. You've got a little video playing out with auditory components. Lovely.
Yeah, we autistics are excellent at that. We live in our heads. And so the other thing is, I think it's very, very critical, and I say this a lot. I hope people who've heard me on the radio probably heard me say this again and again. The word government is a compound of two Latin words, govern from gubernare, meaning control, and ment from mens, meaning mind. And so now we understand, once we understand that, we understand the criticality of people self-governing rather than government from without, which is somebody else controlling our minds for us. And that's exactly what the modern education system is designed to do, where kindergarten to grade 6, no choice. None whatsoever. You have no choice. Parents have even tried to inquire about some of the things they're teaching the kids, and they've been locked out and blocked, and they're not allowed to know what their own children are learning. Very, very dangerous. And so have you ever heard of Mark Passio?
I'm definitely not intimately familiar with him. Maybe
Yes,
I've heard more of his theories than I have himself.
Well, I would definitely recommend you go to one of his, you can even go to his website, What on Earth is Happening, or something like that, and look at the lecture that he has on there. It's like 6 hours long, but you only need to listen to the first like 20, 30 minutes to really get a good, strong impression of where he's at. And I'm telling you that 6 hours goes by like half an hour.
Okay.
So when we come back, I'll talk about that some more.
Lovely.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another extra big-ass fries?
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please
What?
come back when you can afford to make a
no,
purchase.
no!
I'm sorry you're having
Come
trouble.
on. My
I'm
kids
sorry
are
you're
starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our seed pack special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
Hello, I'm Benjamin.
And I'm Jasmine.
We are inner tour guides with black belts in the art of self-awareness and how to live a passionate life.
We love talking with you about what you have and what you want.
More importantly, we want to explore with you how to bridge the gap between that wanting and bring it right back to the having.
So what are your hopes, dreams, and desires?
Is it money, love, success, health, wealth, or something even more specific?
Let us guide you through the exciting adventure of turning what you want into what you have.
Come join in the conversation on our show, The Inner Revolution.
We look forward to exploring with you.
Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat masses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. You know, the shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
Who are we? Where do we come from? Are there other humans in our Milky Way galaxy? What is our real history? What happens after we die? Or what created our universe? What is the purpose of our life? What evolutionary steps do human societies go through? Who built the ancient monolithic sites found all over the Earth? How do the extraterrestrials travel from star to star system with almost no time passing? Ohio Exopolitics is on at 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on Revolution Radio. Join Mark Snyder as he interviews a myriad of excellent guests each Saturday night on Revolution Radio.
At freedomslips.com.
Hi, this is the voice known as Tammy Pepperman. Have you ever thought about how this seems like a farm? The food comes with daily recommended allowance, just like any other farm animal. If you get out of line, you get prodded, slapped, or killed if you're too much liability. And if you are not earning your keep, you can find yourself in prison for non-payment of taxes or child support. If you're tired of being farm product, join us every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Studio B and Saturday, 6 to 8 p.m. on Studio B, right here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hi, welcome back to the Inner Revolution here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We're having quite a lively conversation, and we have Benjamin and myself, and the chat room is going, and it's amazing, and we have Hyro and Nick online, and anybody else who wants to join us here in Studio B, please call in or Skype us, and we'd happily add you to the conversation. Now, before we continue on and pick up where we left off, I'd like to do a few service announcements. Just so I know at the top of the hour, here we are, that I've done this, because it feels really important and really honoring. So first of all, just so you know, there's a new YouTube channel going on. If you go to youtube.com/user/talk revolution radio, you can access all the archives of past shows from all the amazing hosts here, and just listen at your leisure, and you can enjoy such a cross section of voices and opinions and perspectives. It's really quite enjoyable. I've been enjoying them myself. And of course, our show is there as well. And, we'd love if you listen to that. And if you do, and when you do, can you please let any commercial that's at the front of the show just run through? Because I think the station, I don't know if you know, but the station is 100% listener supported. So I think there's a few nickels that might come in that way to help, care for the technology and things like that. And the people who are, paying for the bandwidth so we can all do this, because we're all volunteering here. And along that vein, if you go to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com and go to the support us button, there's all sorts of great ways that you can help us pay the bills of this wonderful platform, so that we can continue to offer up new perspectives from outside mainstream media and from our hearts. And there's such an incredible buffet of offerings here, and seed packs you can get for your donations, or really cool chat room icons. So whatever calls to you, we appreciate your support in every way, and especially you tuning in and listening to all of the shows here on Studio B and A, and I really appreciate you being here at the Inner Revolution. And so there, now back to the hot topic at hand, which is, do we create our realities? And prior to the break, I think we had Nick was talking about some very interesting things. And, I have a question for you. Are you still hanging out with us, Nick?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. So you're very well spoken and very well informed and very passionate. I like that. I like passionate people whose hearts overflow with fire, and they put that out. And from a very grounded perspective, I'm really quite enjoying your energy. But I have a question. I think that a lot of us are pretty sure and about what's going on out there in the world. But I ask, do you have any solutions? Or any proposed solutions or concepts or ideas about how these things can be shifted and changed from a real world perspective? Because it's one thing to point at things, and and we can all get in the bandwagon of how crappy things are and what's going on, but how do we fix it? What's something we can do right now?
Yeah, first and foremost, the answers have always been within reach. They've always been right in front of us. And that's why Hollywood and the controllers, the people above government, use governments and use media and movies to dance puppets in front of us. Are you aware of Plato's allegory of the cave?
I understand what you're saying, but I have a question for you. What solution? I mean, again, I'm being pointed in these directions, but I'm just really curious if you yourself as an individual, because we know that, at least I've heard anyway, that you're really pointing to an individual, for us to become more individualistic and more tuned into who we are. So Nick, what do you propose? Forget Hollywood. Tell me what you see as an answer to something. Pick a topic, and I'd love to know what would be an active way we can actually apply something right here, right now, to shift, to use that word change in a real world way. What's going on?
Well, there is something, but it's just not that simple to put into just a couple of easy sentences. That's why I try to get a little bit of a scenario, and then I can give you some ideas how we can literally change this tomorrow. We can end poverty, we can end starvation, end wars tomorrow.
So tell me, forget the scenarios, just give me the answer. Pretend I'm a bottom line kind of girl when I buy a car or a house, I just want to know, give it to me. I'm pretty informed. Let's assume everyone here is really smart. Because we are.
Now you mentioned you mentioned that the people are pretty sure what's going on in the world. Really not. I mean, you don't know what's going on in the house next to you. So there's millions and most 99% of what's going on in this world we don't know about. And it's important to understand that we're a tiny. Somebody asked God, "Give me all the knowledge there is to know." And God said, "Well, dig a hole, take a shovel, and dig that little hole. Now you see that river in there? Put all that water into that hole." And that's what you're talking about. If you want to know everything, you're like a little hole in the ground, and you're going to try to fit like an ocean into it. Okay.
Well, if you're telling me you have the answer that could be employed tomorrow, please, I'm curious to know what that might be.
Well,
let me help, Nick. Let me help.
Well, just let me say this one word.
Okay.
Okay. Self-government.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's where it's at. We got to stop letting others tell us what to do, what we can and can't do, and we have to abide by the law. And the law is simply do not interfere with someone else, cause no harm. Okay. Now we can work together. If we're working to better ourselves, really the only way we can do that is by working to better each other. And so when we do service to others, we are included in the others. When we do service to self, we are excluding all others.
I disagree. I disagree.
I disagree as well. But the first part I agree with. The first part I'd say yes, because that's exactly the same as, when the baby is born and the first word the baby learns is no. He or she is just going to say no. That is exactly what we should all be doing. Unfortunately, that's not what's going to happen.
What exactly?
And then the second part, well, it doesn't matter what it is, does it? It's just like if anything that happens up in front of you. It's not about legislation. Who cares about that? It's little bits of paper. Don't care if you think I'm dead. I'm not dead. I'm not a corporation. I'm perfectly alive. Your little papers mean nothing to me. So I will simply say no. That's what I would naturally do. And that's what the baby would do.
Yeah,
which is what you were saying first. But the second part I don't agree with. So, Jasmine.
Which is what? I'm not even sure what you disagree with.
Oh, did you want to continue, Jairo? You're doing so great.
No, Jasmine,
I'll tell you. Okay, what I disagree with is the statement that service to self it is not helpful to others. I find that quite undigestible, because my world experience from where I was to who I am with this service to humanity is a direct result of servicing myself, getting in touch with who I am, and most importantly, who I am not. Understanding and reuniting the mind, the body, and the spirit so that I continue to gain clarity and integrity and a deeper understanding and compassion for myself, which subsequently spills out over humanity and the world at large. It is from a place of service to myself that I am able to walk a path of service to humanity. And anyone who does not understand and really dig into their shadow selves and start asking those tough questions, and beyond asking, being willing to hear the deeper answers, regardless of how humiliating or painful or uncomfortable it might be, can be of no service to anyone else. That, in fact, is why I feel the state of the earth is where it is.
Right. Now, when I say service to self, I'm not talking about like knowing myself.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, we're born knowing ourselves quite well. And all we have to do, again, to know ourselves, to get back to knowing ourselves, is to get rid of all of this stuff that has been piled onto us by others.
And how does that happen?
Well, we just, in my case, I never lost grip. I tried to assimilate myself into the collective at the school or whatever I was doing. I failed. And so I was stuck with just myself, with my own thing, and I couldn't change myself. I couldn't put on that facade in order to be able to function in the social groups. So I remained myself through the whole thing. A lot of people, they become part of groups, and their identity attaches itself to that group, and that becomes part of them. Well, now you've got another layer that really isn't you.
And so my question is, how does someone, you're just said that they have to, they have to take these veils off, these layers off. How do they do that? How do you propose they do that?
It's quite simple. It's quite simple.
And what's okay? How?
Yeah, you just do a little bit of meditation, and you start looking at yourself and seeing what's you and seeing what is something else. And that can be done within. Like I say, I'm autistic, and so I live in my head, and I know myself intimately. And so, I don't have all of those layers masking who I truly am. So I know I'm going to be okay. I don't have to service myself anymore. I think maybe a couple of sessions of interaction with people like you,
Nick, I am going to annoy you. Nick is not autistic. He is an Asperger. This is high-functioning autistic, and this is the same thing that Tesla was. This is the kind of level you need to be thinking. This means he's someone that doesn't fit into the norm, but he has wonderful talents.
Oh, thank you. Well, as do we all. We're all capable of genius. And, we all need to, like I say, you get in touch with yourself, and that's really all there is to it. That's not service to self. That's just reconnecting. And then, service to self is, or service period is work. When you go out and you construct things, you interact with people, you smile at someone, that's service to others. And that's also service to yourself. Because if you work to protect the rights of others, you have just worked to protect your rights. If you protect someone else's rights, they're never going to want to interfere with your rights.
So I think we need to define something here a little further, because I hear two different views, and they are getting a little bit conflicted in this conversation. One idea, as I understand it, is for working for oneself only because of the idea that I am separate, because of the idea that I don't have a connection to my own source of liveliness. And when I believe such a worldview, I actually enact in such a way that I have to now gain that type of a life force from others. And this is something that we, at that point, do intuitively. We, in order to survive, then start to reach without rather than within in order to regain that sort of a control and also that type of meaning in life, and also that type of a life force when life really feels good. But that is most often when we're not really connected to the inner core, and one could call it service to self, to actually reconnect to that inner core. Now, there again, we're back down to definitions, and we always have to see how we want to define things in this particular conversation, because, well, there is certainly the aspect of allowing oneself to connect to one's own inner core, and that is very often also what we have essentially as our core message. That's why we call this show The Inner Revolution, because when we start to connect to other people from having connected to our inner core first, we're already so charged that, but in a positive way, so that we can give from the overflow rather than the reservoir. At that point, we can actually assist other people, because we start to understand that as we work together, we can actually have more together than if we work against one another, than if we feel like we have to steal from others from mere survival, from mere feeling good about ourselves, or from having been so controlled and bogged down by external authority that we just don't feel like we have say-so in our own worlds anymore. And when we do regain that understanding that we have power by virtue of existing, by virtue of creating our own spelling, our own spells, and that we don't have to be cast into other people's spells anymore, then we can actually start to create our world the way we want to. And I have only found that when I actually take the whole into account as best as I can, and that includes myself, because some people can also step into this selfless service where they forget themselves, and that tends to backfire just as much. That's the martyr syndrome, when you end up actually running yourself down to the point that you don't feel good anymore either. And there is a necessary part.
I don't mean to interrupt, but Anne Benjamin, when you say the whole, you mean the whole. This isn't just, it's just not humanity. You're talking about the whole of all existence. You're talking about everything that even beyond, because you speak quantum. You talked quantum earlier, both of you, talking about time. So everything, it is all things. It is not just about people.
All that is, yes.
It really depends on what we tap into, but the thing is that generally you can understand it in any which way. These words aren't, especially in the English language, aren't necessarily just they don't just contain one meaning, and oftentimes when we start to take the multiple meanings, very often it starts to make sense in so many ways. You can actually play with that in so many fun ways. It actually, that's oftentimes even what humor is based on, by a certain way of misunderstanding language and then revealing it was actually a completely different way. So who's on second? So anyway, essentially, yes, there is...
That's called the pun. That humor's called the pun. P-U-N.
Punt?
And the thing is...
No, P-U-N.
So it really depends on how or where we operate from when we are connecting to ourselves and to others from that place of feeling full and wanting to create more of the goodness. Then we actually vibrate at that frequency and we get more of that, because that's where we're vibrating, because like attracts like. And when we're not operating from that type of a place because we feel we're lacking, at that point we want to regain that from the whole into the wholeness, and essentially bring back a fullness to our life experience. And then the question is, are we looking to steal it from other people, or are we trying to regain it for ourselves? And so there can be a bit of a misunderstanding sometimes between what we're talking about self-service, because sometimes it is really important to fill yourself with the goodness that you truly are. But the question is, have you ever known to understand it that way? Have you ever consciously connected to yourself in that way? If you don't know that, if you've never learned that, it's really difficult. You'll be in that dance that you've learned, because most of the world seems to operate in at least the human world, so that we need to get from someone else in order to feel better about our world. But that's not necessarily true. When we look at it from we are already all whole, let's create even more from where we're at, we can actually do that. The question is, again, just where are we coming from? Sometimes the self-service is...
It's fantastic. There is something you've just said there. Sorry, I'm so annoying. It is my nature. But like,
be as annoying as you can. Go for it. Step right on it.
I find it delicious, actually. Go ahead.
Like attracts like. I've just realized what it is. Because when I think about like attracts like, I think about people who have the same, they exhibit the same kind of symptoms. They express themselves in the same way, that like attracts like. But it isn't. It's intention. Like intention attracts like intention. That's what's happened to me over and over again. Thank you. You just opened my mind very wide. Thank you, Benjamin.
Oh, how tasty is that? I love that. And you know, those intentions are vibrational.
Yes, it's all about vibration, because, I mean, we are at the core of our beings just vibration. All of it is sound, light. Those are all just words to explain the same concept of fluctuation. If you want to call it that, you could call it change, but change, when we look at this, change is often nominalized. It's made into a thing, but change is not a thing. It's actually a process that we undergo in our minds through comparison of two different states. We look at one picture of having been in one state, then at another picture of having been in another state. If they match, we call it the same. If they don't match, we call it different, and at that point we could call it they have changed. But it's really more about what we're doing in our minds. It's not necessarily that they are ultimately changed, but here we're getting into really a vast topic, because now we're starting to look at this from the mechanics of it all, from the meta perspective of, well, what's happening in the mind, because we cannot isolate our mental processes from anything that we're talking about, because everything is only happening in our own personal mind virtual reality, in our own little hologram. And from that place, we are constructing a map of the world from within. But most often we believe we actually look at things outside ourselves that are separate from those processes. But quantum physics is now showing that that's not quite accurate. You cannot isolate the observer from the process itself, because in one way or another, you have to process information in order to even comprehend what's going on. So at that point, you make it come alive in your own virtual reality.
Yes.
Well spoken.
I really want to talk, but I know there's other people that want to speak. Got just in time, and I say nothing.
Who wants to speak? You've got 4 seconds. Pony up. 1.
Hi, Ro. Can you hear me?
No, I can't hear you at all. I don't know who you are.
Sorry. The number you've got. Go ahead.
I think Benjamin was on a very good point there, and I think one of the ways we could probably change things tomorrow is from our intentions. I mean, stop and think about the percentage of the people that are out there, maybe got the computer monitor in front of them. Ask yourselves how many hours a day, if they are hours, that you spend there. Make a little change. Take one of those hours and go for a walk outside, 1 hour a day, and say hello to everybody you run into. Smile. If they don't reply back, your intention was good. If you see them the following day or maybe a couple days later when you go on a walk, say hi again. Smile.
And make sure you bring a baseball bat.
Steve, you always do it to me, Hyro. You throw the negative saucer right in there. But I think that's a lot of the problem. Is I really get frustrated when I listen to people talk during one course of the day, and I hear all these labels. And I ask myself, well, gee, how often do I do that? Do I put labels on people without even knowing them? And the numbers were scary because I counted. And
aren't we doing that by calling them by their name? Isn't a name also just a label?
True.
Well done.
So how would you like me to address you?
I'm okay. I'm okay with being labeled.
If I can,
it's convenient, isn't it? It's very convenient to use labels. I mean, they are allowing us to communicate over the internet, and it is so convenient because you can understand me, but yet you have to actually translate it back into your own reality. And I bet you that each one that is listening to the show has a little mini version in their virtual reality of me and of each of you. And
each word and each concept is different.
Absolutely.
It's like if you talk about a tree, any kind of tree, you're talking about everybody's thinking something different. It is always the same. But it isn't the same for babies. It isn't the same for animals because they don't waste time with the ridiculousness of words. And I don't think we did in the first. If you look at those old ancient places that we used to live in, they didn't use that. They used geometry, perfect geometry, and there were no words. And we seem to assume that means that people were stupid. They didn't need words because they didn't express themselves in that way.
I have an interesting exercise that I often ask when I facilitate workshops people to play with, and you can play with it in your life if you like. Give it a shot. What would it be like to eliminate for one day or even an hour? I suggest perhaps starting with an hour. The word "I" from the vocabulary. That changes everything. And for me, that really ties into what you're saying, Jairo, about, labeling things or about, I lost my strand of thought. I looked out the window, saw a woodpecker, and out the door I went. Isn't that amazing?
Is very, very important. I is very, very important. But what you say is also very important because eliminating the word I means that I automatically become a part of all, which is what we should really understand.
Well, the word "should" is another one that I have a little bit of an issue around because we should all over ourselves. I mean, we could. It becomes less of a command when we say we could.
I said it. Thank you, Jasmine. I'm so sorry. I needed
No need to apologize. I'm so enjoying this. I'm having a blast. Are you gentlemen having a blast? And everybody who's listening, are you enjoying what's unfolding here? Because I'm finding it very stimulating, and I'm finding the energy and the consciousness that's moving through and the vibrations to be very uplifting and very unifying and yet unique. And I really appreciate that.
Wow, Jasmine and Benjamin, I'm really very much enjoying this. And I have decided I have booked you a wonderful, wonderful place. It's a wonderful seat that we can go to McDonald's so we can have a fantastic meal.
I don't do the Mickey D's, but thank you for your offer, and I especially like the voice. It was somewhat sultry.
Can I jump in with something?
Jasmine, we have no intention of eating there. We're going to cause problems.
I'm not much of a troublemaker. I mean, that should be coming through strong and clear, no?
Actually,
we were talking about frequency before. Just 1 second. Before we were talking about frequency, and here's my answer to that one. Baby, I know say you're going to cause trouble. Don't try life with me. I know Benjamin and Jasmine going to cause every kind of problem every time we walk into any McDonald's.
Don't be talking to me like that. No, I understand. That was a really accent. I prefer this one for myself. It's much easier to do.
I believe Nick wanted to chime in too.
Nick, please, please go ahead.
Thanks. You do cause trouble for those who are trying to, those who are trying to enslave us. When you tell the truth and you start waking up people, you're causing trouble for them, and that's just the nature of it. And we, again, have to address the issue of using this horrible word change. You can take it to the bank. You are changing. You are going to change. No matter how much you try to do things the same, it will be a little bit different every single time. When you interact with others, you impart small changes in them. The question is, what kind of change is it going to be? Is it going to be changed to another version of the same reality, or are we going to transform our reality? And the important thing is to recognize the need to transform our reality before we even start talking about what that transformation should be.
Well, and the thing is that we do all have an innate knowledge of what feels good to us at the innermost core of our hearts. So it's like knowing what's dark and what's light. Our eyes just translate it. And our hearts can do it just the same way. We automatically just understand which direction feels good and which doesn't. And I mean, the water is going to keep flowing whether it looks like it or not. Yes, you're right, the change is inevitable. But the thing is now, when we do become the masters of our own worlds, we can start to influence the direction in which we want to go. And the thing is that, yes, there are people that are wanting to control others, but that's only because they haven't quite realized how delicious it can be to stand in your own power, to not have to get your life force from others, but rather from your own infinite source, and then to keep working with others to amplify and let that grow. I mean, if we just take a moment right now and focus on our breaths, that is part of your own rhythm that is so unique to you. And there's another rhythm going on, which is your heart. And as we're actually just breathing in and out, we're constantly expressing that rhythm. And it doesn't need a word. It doesn't need a label. It is taken care of from a level of ourselves that we have a hard time understanding with our lower minds, because they're just a little challenged by such complex ideas. It's sort of tough to get a hang of that through conscious effort when they're really unconscious processes. But the unconscious is also so vast and so powerful that we just need to learn to align ourselves with it, to understand the innate knowledge and understanding that comes with it. Because when we start to tap into that, that is the time when we will automatically align ourselves with what's not only good for us, but what's good for the whole as well. Because the heart, the heart is only a single unit. It thinks of everything as a unity, whereas the mind is split in two halves. It does have a way of being able to split things. That's also why language generally tends to split things into different concepts. But the heart, again, when we start to tap into that, into its infinite reservoir of not only life force, but wisdom and knowledge, then we can start again to work together from an intuitive place without even having to think about it much. But the beauty comes in when we learn to combine the mind and the heart and the spirit, bring it all back together into one cell, one complete body. And at that point, we will be capable of doing what we came here to do. Then it's not just scurrying around to get our piece of the pie, but rather, let's make a whole bunch more.
And share, and support, and uplift, and create, and experience, and perceive, and expand.
Because then there's also more than I can eat myself, because now I learned to bake pie rather than just eat it.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
eat it.
And once you master that, then it becomes innate, and you don't even have to think about it anymore. I think my issue comes when we talk about, you have to serve yourself before you can serve anybody else, is that locks a lot of people into a lifetime of seeking for ways to service themselves, and they never, ever will look out and seek ways to service others. Because there is balance, of course. In order to be able to effectively serve others, you do need to make sure you're taken care of as well, because like I say, you are among the others. So service to others does not exclude yourself. So we as far as I'm concerned, we need to include others in our service, in our work. When we go to work, we are working for, building furniture or whatever, distributing, whatever we do, it's for the service of others. But unfortunately,
that is the clumsiness of that phrase. Because that phrase, service to self and service to others, does give me that same inclination. It gives me the idea that, you don't do anything for yourself and you do everything for others, which is you will not have that. What did Benjamin say before? It was quite nice. You have no overflow. You don't serve yourself first, so that you can give something else to somebody else.
I don't like for a lot of people, it's the opposite.
So service to everyone, not just others, but service to everyone, because then we're including ourselves as well. Because when we say others, we're splitting apart again. Everyone is still trying, it still splits it apart a little bit, but it at least is more so pointing at the concept of inclusion of all. Or you could even go one step further and say service to all there is.
That's what I prefer, and that's my overview perspective, and it is such about love as well. And oftentimes, we hear in this awakening, in this awareness, as we try and shift and become more expansive and inclusive, that what is happening to me? There's something very strange happening in my mind. It's as though thoughts are being plucked out of them, like little cherries.
It's
It's
something
really,
I'm very good at. You might be catching that from me.
is that what you're doing? Well, stop it.
But when I go through a doorway, doorways erase my memory. I don't know what it is.
Hmm.
It's horrible. It's been a struggle. Like I say, there's no question I'm autistic. I mean, I could not split my personality so I could be what I'm supposed to be at school, and then split so I could be what I'm supposed to be at home. I had to be the same person all the way, and I considered myself to be that to be a type of retardation before the word autistic ever entered my vocabulary. And because everyone else did it, I know they were different with me one-on-one versus the group. I saw the transformation that everyone else underwent, and I just wasn't able to do that. And also losing my thoughts until
But you know what, Nick? There's one thing. I just want to say one thing. I'm sorry, but like the one thing I'd like to say is Asperger is the best box that fits you. It doesn't mean that's you. And especially in Asperger, because you're not going to fit into any box, are you?
Well,
That's not. It doesn't work that way.
I got called Goldilocks. I got called stupid, three-letter F word, not meaning homosexual at the time. But anyway, that's what it was just used.
They were calling you a cigarette. Oh, I've been called a cigarette so many times. Actually, it's been posted on the chat, and I'm going to share this as a service announcement that on April the 11th, BK will be doing a 12-hour show for Autism Live from 1 p.m. Pacific till 4 p.m. Eastern at this site. And so it's www.talk4, as in the number 4, autism.com/. So, anybody who's interested in that sounds like a wonderful and interesting venture. And so now go ahead. I just felt like an opportune moment to slip that in.
I'm glad you brought that up because I do want to tune into that. But I just like the way autism sounds a lot better than Asperger's. Asperger's kind of brings me back to the schoolyard days. If I was labeled with that back then, oh my God, they would have gone to town on it.
Yeah. Aspie is another way of saying it.
I think that's very snaky, isn't it? An asp.
Well, yeah, but we call other people, we call them neurotypicals. Well, other people call them neurotypicals psychologically, but I don't. I call them zombies. But like, not you. I am pleased to have met there are people of your ilk that can do the usual stuff, yet have got great minds and great spirits.
Oh, excuse me, gentlemen. I think we've got somebody else that's joined us.
Yes, 808 just came in, free and awake.
Free and awake. How are you? Oh, yoo-hoo. In and out.
Did he leave again?
Oh, maybe we had him wait.
This is 808. I just wanted to say that.
Go ahead. Sorry, the volume control went down on mic. Can you hear me loud and clear?
There you are. Hello. How are you?
Hello. Okay, I had to turn the player off too. You can hear me loud and clear now?
Much better now.
Everyone? Great.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm enjoying the conversation. So, just to kind of summarize, the heart is inclusive. The mind is exclusive. And my question is, does the spirit balance the two modes?
Well, how can we there's a way in which we view the body with all these chakras. I'm sure most of us have heard of the chakra systems. And you know what I feel, that when we include the mind and the body, and then we reunite mind, body with the spirit, what unfolds is that energy, that unique vibration and tonality that we are, our consciousness, comes through the body vehicle, opens up the pineal pituitary, and actually incorporates the spaces between the chakras so that we become one chakra level vortex, one pure, expansive expression of who we are. And I feel that expresses most specifically through the heart. Because
yes, certainly because it unifies. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Ben.
I would say that actually the spirit exists before even the mind and the heart come through, because it creates all of that. It is actually what is the foundation upon which, the foundation of consciousness upon which the mind space and the heart emotions and feelings are layered. It is essentially the backdrop upon which the movie screen is played, such that it allows for the space in order to have experience in the first place. Now, then we have the heart as well as the mind in order to experience that. Because, I mean, the heart was already fun to play with and great to experience this reality, but the mind certainly brought in another aspect of duality that made this world even much more fun than that. It can also become misleading unless we return back to the seat of the heart being the primary that does connect us with the spirit, because when we get down to it, essentially what we feel in emotions and feelings, that is what is our spirit energy. And through that reflection of that physical experience of emotions and feelings, we can see whether we have tapped into our spirit energy or not.
Which is a good point you made earlier. I don't see why we always have to. We seem to have this habit of needing to divide things, putting a line down between either or, service to self, service to others. Why, as Benjamin said earlier, why not service to everyone? Or dividing the heart and the emotions with the spirit. Why not put them all together? That's what I try to practice on, and it works very well. When I stop saying either or, everything feels great, and the intention is just to move ahead. Just keep going. Feel good. I know there's people out there listening to this show right now saying, wow, this feels great, and this isn't about politics or some asteroid hitting us, but I love this.
Well, it feels good, and it feels good to connect. And I love that you made that point, because it's not either or, it's both. When we're, sitting there in our daily lives with our partners or friends, and we're deciding is it a pizza or Chinese or Indian, why don't we order them all? Why does it have to be either or? And it begins from, the application in these simple, small activities in our world that can begin to create an influence. And since, since we're not using the word change, I'm becoming quite aware of that. Although there is no such thing as small change, one of my favorite quotes I will now put to the side. We do influence. We have influence, and for us to think that we don't, or to consider that we're small and incapable of that, I think is something that wants to be reconsidered, because we do have influence. We influence with our tonalities. We influence with our thoughts. We influence with the way we feel, with the way in which we interact. And I say that we all begin to get really selfish. And in saying that, I mean we all practice radical self-care. And in further defining that, I say when I walk out in my world, and I suggest and invite you to do the same, when you smile at someone, have zero expectations, zero assumption, and zero insistence that anything come back to you from that, except the simple, wonderful, joyous, tickly, delicious pleasure of being able to radiate out, of being able to see the beauty, of being able to say, hey, I enjoyed that smile, and I don't expect to be smiled at. There's the joy of life, because we begin to start getting off on our own energy. How much more can I influence the world? Because maybe that person didn't smile at me, but I felt good, and in that there is an actual electromagnetic energy that is measurable, that actually influences things. And if all of us started practicing feeling good, making decisions because we feel good. And I assure you, when you tune into your heart energy and you make decisions from that unity of mind, body, and spirit expressed through your heart, the words that flow from your lips, the way you move through the world, the way your eyes shine and your body glows, will create, we all did this, man, this world would change, bang, overnight.
And I love how good you are and making it sound so delicious. I can
Makes
feel
the
it already.
mundane sound sublime, I tell you.
Oh,
Yes.
these
But
two
that
are good.
isn't mundane.
I love listening to these two. I'll tell
It's
you,
not.
they're getting the McDonald's.
It's
McDonald's
Go out there
revolution.
and
We're
hug
not going to actually
somebody.
gonna eat
the
that
golden
stuff.
arches, eh? and the thing is, what I love so much is that when we actually get back to that type of a spirit, we do become all-inclusive. And the idea of the source or the quantum field of unity, or, for example, as some people also call it, the God consciousness, it is also often termed all that is. And when we stop saying this or that, but rather say this and that, and I've found so many times that when I dig deep within my soul, I have found that seemingly things that didn't match up. One truth seemed to be mutually exclusive to another. But when I was willing to open myself completely and say and rather than or, I could actually see that seemingly mutually exclusive truths didn't have to be. And when I included both of them, I actually allowed myself to feel much bigger. I wasn't so focused anymore on the separatist idea of me even being separate from things, but at that point am tapping myself back into that spirit, that source, myself as being part of all that is, because now I don't have to exclude anything from my experience anymore. And that does bring about another little smile from the inside, because now I don't have to cut out from my world anymore, but I can love it all no matter what it looks like. And then I can still have the free choice to choose anything that is in my preference that feels better from my innermost heart. But when I say only this should be and that cannot be, even though, especially if I might experience it in my reality anyway, and I'm trying to cut it out because it shouldn't be there, I usually find myself tortured. But when I let it stand on its own and I allow it to have life, and I allow everything to be, and then choose from what feels so deliciously good on my innermost heart, at that point, I act with a voraciousness and a power that goes beyond anything else. That's the power that creates worlds, because it is the foundation of spirit upon which everything is built.
Exactly,
Well,
Benjamin, and I think
I
that's
have,
what tickles what Jasmine was talking about. If you pardon the phrase, if you can get off on just feeling good about yourself, and it doesn't matter if nobody else feels, just start with yourself, and if you can feel good about yourself, if you can feel that emotion, that strength, it's going to rub off, and other people are going to feel it, and they're going to say,
Amen.
Yeah. Hey, Benjamin, I got a practical...
Well, I would never do any of that. I'm sorry, A2A. I think that's wonderfully philosophical. But if you see something that you don't like when you're walking around this world, walk around as I do with a small samurai sword. And sometimes, if I'm particularly interested, I will also wear a Japanese dress. And I will chop the head off anything that comes anywhere near me. Yeah. And then there's a problem in that, like, I also have a really big problem in that I find this is a huge matrix. I know there are different things. There are I know there are parallel universes. I have seen these and spirits that live around me constantly in this world, even on this level. And I don't want any of that. And I don't want to go to because people talk about source. And when they're talking about source, they're usually talking about the source of what is this material world. I want straight out of here, straight back to what the real source is, and then go somewhere else completely.
Well, you know
go
what?
for it, free and awake. We're sending Hyro to Jack in the Box.
I'm all about I'm all about going direct. And when you talk, and if you're really being serious about, you being aware of multidimensional unseen friends around you or unseen entities.
Yes, that's what I used to see them as a child, Jasmine.
I get that. And you know what? I mean, I have all sorts of interesting experiences. And what I know and actually having a friend who's been going through for the past year a very interesting scenario in her world. And, maybe next show, I don't have enough time right now. I see we're clocking out shortly. But what I know is that when we stand in our awareness, completely united, mind, body, and spirit, and we declare our body, our minds, and our worlds under our own command, then you're going direct to the source, not of materialism, although that's a part of the source as well. Let's not deny anything and include everything. But you're tapping into that source of who you are, of all that is, of the multiverse, of all that is. And then you decide, I want to see them, I don't. Why are they here? What am I believing? And you start to redefine your world, and you can shift that. If it's uncomfortable for you, life is far too long to be living in a state of discomfort, whether that be spiritually, mentally, or physically. But one has to reclaim and remember and realize and realign with all parts of the human experience. And from that place, then you are the creator of your world.
Okay, I have a thought exercise. It's like a practical application of what we're discussing. Let's say someone deprived you of something, in that moment. Maybe your bicycle or whatever. How should you respond given what has just been said about including everything and sort of turning the other cheek? So what would be the mechanism to deal with that situation?
Well, my question for you would be, when you are at that point actually capable of seeing that as something that was supposed to happen. You're not denying the experience that someone is taking this from you right now. Can you also realize that no one can ever take anything from you without you actually feeling taken from? And that's something that you have to create in your own reality. Now, the thing is, going beyond that, if you then recognize that you are whole and complete with this bicycle or without it, it doesn't matter whether you actually have that in your life. You can be happy, complete, and fulfilled, full of light. Then you can decide from your innermost joy, what brings you the most excitement? Is it actually quite literally to say, hey, this is not the way to go about it? Or are you, hey, you know what? I hear you. If you steal this from me, maybe you need it that much more than I do. Have it. Go ahead. Be my guest. But the thing is, I can't tell you that there's only one way of acting, but there is one way that will never let you down. If you can find that place within yourself where there is that light, where you don't feel taken away from, you can choose from complete and utter freedom. And it might feel that much better to you to actually say, hey, please have it. I see that you're struggling. Go ahead. You must really suffer in your world if you feel that you need to take this from others. And the thing is, one thing that I wanted to add about the dark entities is that when you connect to that light beingness in your own inner core, that pure source, there is no dark switch. There is no shadow that can remain within the center of the light. There is only a light switch. So when you are connected to that, there is no darkness that can remain. If you feel that it can harm you, you are creating that in one way or another as an experience for yourself, because you're so unconditionally supported that you can even create the experience of lack. You're so abundant that you can even create the experience of lack, but you will never, at the core of your being at least, be ever completely lacking. That's impossible.
So, matter of perspective, a degree, and being in touch with the source.
Yes, and sometimes it's really difficult to get to that place that quickly. It really is. I'm not saying that this is an easy job to do, but it certainly allows you for a different type of choice, because otherwise you might just think from a right or wrong paradigm and think that there is only one way of acting here, which is not necessarily the case. You are completely free to act in any which way that you want, and if you actually have a wider array of choices, because you don't judge this to have to only look one way or another, you might find other ways of dealing with it that actually do feel a lot better.
And just so we know, I want to let everyone know that upcoming right after us is At This Moment with Angela Black. Always an interesting show, and she's just a wonderful personality and character. I want to thank everybody who's joined us today in the chat room and live online. You guys are awesome. And
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll keep going until the music cuts in, but I just want to ensure that everyone, just receives my appreciation. Open your hearts and receive that. It's been an incredible experience with all of you today.
Just lovely.
And I'm grateful. And see you next week,
Thank
everyone.
you, Benjamin, Jasmine.
Bye-bye.
Mwah,
Have a blast.
Bye.
See ya.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. The shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com